Hi friends, Mindy here. I have a process video today of day 2 of In the Night season from Bythewell4God. I am working in a traveler's notebook this time, and this is the devotional. I'm just kind of setting that off to the side while I work, and I'm going to flip to day 2 and I'm going to get started. I decided to work in a traveler's notebook this time. Sometimes I work in my Bible. That's what I did last month, but I just wanted a little extra room to get messy and try some different techniques this time. So I'm gonna work straight in one of the traveler's notebooks that you can get that coordinate with the kits. And the first thing I'm gonna do here is stencil in a background. I have this 12 by 12 stencil that has the kind of diamonds that kind of mimic that look from one of the pattern papers. And so I'm going to use some distress ink it's Dusty Concord, and I cannot remember the blue one, Faded Jeans, I think. And I'm just going to use those two colors together to kind of create a background with this stencil. This is kind of a big stencil for this page. The diamond shapes are going to be really big, but I think it will work out okay. So off camera, I just grabbed some washi tape, and I'm just using that. I put some paper down, and I put also my little plastic mat, just to kind of keep all of the ink from going where I don't want it to go. And what I'm using, one of those little makeup blender brushes, and what I'm doing is I'm kind of blending the two colors on this brush. So on the top part of the brush, I'm dipping into the Dusty Concord, and the bottom part of the brush, I'm dipping into Faded Jeans. That way when I'm actually stenciling, I can get those kind of blended colors together in each of the triangles. It's just a trick without like contaminating either of the ink pads. And then I can go back and forth and add more purple or more blue depending on how each is looking. And then it's kind of giving that starry sky kind of look because it's a little bit splotchy, which is what I'm doing. So right here I'm working in the gutter, which is a little trickier, but I'm just going to go across both pages and just again going into both of the colors. One is a distress oxide ink, that's the Faded Jeans, and then one is just the regular distress ink. You can use them together. I just didn't have Dusty Concord in the oxide ink. Otherwise I would have used the oxide for both of them because I really like the finish that particular ink gives, but I just am using what I have for right now till I finish collecting the oxide ink colors. And then I'm just cleaning the brush off onto a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to pull up this stencil, and you can see it's very, very stark white back there, and so that's not exactly the look that I'm going for. So now that the stencil's up, I'm just going to take that that same blending brush, and because I'm using this, I'm going to add that pattern paper also, so it was just way too white. So I'm just taking the Faded Jeans, and I'm just going just lightly over basically the background now, and that's really just to block out and just kind of tone down some of that white. I want to leave some of it. I don't want the page to get too dark, but I'm just adding a layer of color, just kind of smoothing everything out. And I got a little carried away right there on that left side, but that's okay because that's where I'm intending to put some of that pattern paper, so it'll get covered up anyway. So I'm just kind of tapping the ink pad and then tapping off on a scrap piece of paper, just so I'm not getting too much ink on there. I don't want the background to overpower the little stencil design. So just adding some color into the background to kind of knock that white back some. And then this is what it looks like when I'm finished. And I'm going to use this pattern paper. I'm just going to tear a couple sections. I'm doing it so that the white is showing. Depending on the direction that you tear, will either leave the white edge or not. And I actually want the white edge, so I'm tearing it so that I have that. And I'm going to glue those pieces down on either side of this 2-page spread here in my traveler's notebook. And it's just not quite long enough to cover the entirety of the page. So I'm going to use some washi tape. I'm just kind of trying to figure out which one I want to use down here at the bottom so that it covers up that little, it's like 1/4 of an inch. It's not even really a lot, but it's just one of those things that I'll notice. So now I'm going to glue down this pattern paper with my ATG tape glider, and then I will add that washi tape down across the bottom of both pages just to try to tie everything together. And it's kind of hard to tell the colors in this video, but the background of this paper that I'm gluing down has a dark sky, but it's got also those purples and stuff in there, so I'm going to pull that through, and then I'll use that. I have some purple, like galaxy looking washi tape that I'm going to add across the bottom, and that's just going to fill in that gap. And then I'm using a little knife to cut so that the paper doesn't, so that the traveler's notebook closes easier. So now I'm pulling out my Bible because I'm going to write out the scripture that I want to use. And you can see I tested some colors there in my traveler's notebook after I took some notes for day 2. And I'm just reading, trying to decide all of the information, which information I want to include on my traveler's notebook page here. So I'm going to flip through these flashcards, and there's several that actually go along with this page in terms of either the word that's on the flashcard or the scripture that's on the flashcard, or the color, whatever. So I am trying to pick which one I want to use, and there's 3 that I think that will work, and I will pull those out, set them to the side. And I'm going to use this is a 4x6 Project Life journaling card, and I'm going to use that to write out the scripture because I'm going to write out Ephesians 1:4-6, and it's kind of a long verse, so I need some extra space. So I decided that I'm probably going to use the Worthy is the Lamb flashcard because it is mentioned in the devotional content, and then also the Grace card because it's actually the one that references the Ephesians 1:4-6 verse. So I'm going to end up using both of those. But this journaling card is a very bright white again, so I'm just taking that same Faded Jeans color of Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just going to go around the edge of this journaling card just to tone down that white, and it will kind of end up making the whole card seem like it's not quite as bright white, even though I'm really just inking up the edges. And I'm just using a smaller one of those makeup blending brushes. I just bought those in a set, so I have a few different sizes, and then I'm just making sure to start pulling the ink like from the plastic onto the actual journaling card. That's a way that you can kind of avoid getting those heavy splotches. So I just have my journaling card here ready, just inked up, and then I'm going to off camera write out the verse, which again is Ephesians 1:4-6, that says, according as he hath chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love, having predestinated us into the adoption of children by Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of the glory of his grace, wherein he hath made us accepted in the beloved. I read from the King James Version, so that's what that is. And I'm going to include that flashcard up there at the top that says Worthy is the Lamb. And it just kind of pulls all of those colors together. But I wanted it to pop up off the page a little bit more, so I'm going to pull in that sort of bright pink color as well. I didn't want to use the adopted card because I'll probably use that later for something else. But so I'm just using some of the pattern paper, and I'm just going to make a little mat for this flashcard so that it just pops up off the page a little bit. It was just giving some contrast to that real dark purple, which is beautiful, but just so it stands up off the page a little bit more. And I'm just trimming that down a little bit so that everything is even, and it's gonna kind of rest right there at the top of the journaling card. And that's about all the room I'll have on that side to do any kind of decorating. And so now I am going to work on the left side of the page, and there's a quote that is mentioned in the devotional from John Piper that says, "The greatest suffering that ever was will be the center of our worship and our wonder forever." And I just thought that was so beautiful. So I'm going to pull some of that pink across, and I'm going to use one of the prayer cards that you can get from the kit, but I'm actually using the back side of it because I just wanted it for the color. So I'm just going to write out that quote from John Piper here on this card. I like to, whenever I'm working in a traveler's notebook, I always like to include the verse that I'm referencing, so I always write that out, and then some thoughts or notes or quotes or whatever, but I just thought this quote was so beautiful. So I'm going to write that out here on the back of this card, and then I will put that on the left side of this paper, and just, again, trying to pull some pink over there, which is why I went with this particular journaling card. And then I am going to go ahead and ink up the outside of that as well. I'm going to use the bottom half of that card so that I have room to include the other flashcard that I want to put on there, which is the one that says grace, which is the one that mentions the verse in Ephesians. So here again, I'm just inking up just the very, very edges of this, the prayer card. I'm using that same Distress Oxide ink and just very carefully going around just to get a little bit of color on the outside and kind of bring all of those colors, which are kind of contrasting, but kind of blending them all together this way. And then I will also do the same thing on just the very edge of the grace card. It's kind of the same color tone, but I just wanted it a little bit darker. But I was having a hard time with the makeup brush because those are just a little bit soft. So I went back with like a foam blender where I could just kind of scrape it straight along the edge, and it just gives it a little bit of a different look, which is what I was going for. I just really wanted to darken the edges of that card without having kind of ink go all the way in. So I'm going to put those two kind of overlapping down here in the bottom left corner of this spread, and then I'm going to use this heart that has that kind of galaxy look to it. That's from the ephemera pack from the kit. And I was trying to figure out a way to use this other card that said adopted, because it's really, all of these things kind of go together, but I just didn't have room to work that in, and I still needed to title my page, and I wanted to create the card, the title. I always like to include the title of the devotional day on here, and in this case that is the slaughtered lamb. And so I used some cardstock and the galaxy looking clear stickers, and I just used those on this piece of paper, and I'm going to go ahead and also ink up the edges of that. It's just a white piece of paper, and then it's just a little bit too long, so I have to end up cutting off like kind of the corner, which is fine, but you can see here I'm going to go around, and the same thing that I've did with all of the other pieces. I'm just going to use some oxide ink and go around with the makeup brush around the corners, around the edges, just to bring in some more of that blue purple color. Faded Jeans is a color, I really like that color, but and then I'll do the same thing with some pink paper behind there, just to really help make that stand out. So you can see I'm pulling some more of my scrap paper. Always save your scraps, because you can use it to help do things like this, where you just add a little pop of color, layering behind things, just add some more visual interest. So I'm kind of off camera there, sorry. Here I'm just going to trim down this piece of paper, and it's just a scrap. So I'm going to almost make it like a drop shadow, kind of, because it's only going to go around two sides instead of matting the whole thing. I just didn't have enough room to do that because this title was so long. So here I am just trying to trim everything out. And I will adhere those together and then add those in that top left corner up there for my title. And that's, again, the title for day 2 from the devotional. I'm trying to decide if I want to keep it straight. I kind of liked it tilted. It just adds a little bit more interest when you have things that are kind of, offset just a little bit. At least that's how I like things. So here I'm just gluing the mat back behind there, and then trying to decide if I'm going to do this straight or at an angle. I decided to go with just slightly angled, and then I need to I'll have to trim off some of that corner, which is fine, so that it's not in the gutter of the traveler's notebook. Anytime you have something that kind of overlaps the gutter or is in the gutter like that, it makes the book hard to close. So I'm gluing that down and just trimming off just a little bit of that corner right there, and that will just make it so that it closes a lot easier. And it's hanging just a little bit off the edge of the book, but that's fine because I'll have other things as I work along through this book that are hanging off either the top or the sides. That's just something that I like to do. So now I'm just going around and gluing everything down. When I'm not sure how everything's going to go, I kind of leave gluing everything down until the very end, just so I make sure I have all the pieces that I want and have them where I want them, instead of having to deconstruct, which I do sometimes also. But there, I ran out of glue in my tape glider, so I'm just using a tonic tape runner for the rest of these pieces. I'm just getting everything stuck down, and then that will be the end. I think, well, I need to include day 2. I always like to write which day that I'm working, and so in this instance I'm going to use the alpha tile stickers, which are another thing that I love using from Bythewell4God, and they coordinate. You get a lot of letters with these stickers, so it's something that I always find to be very helpful. They come in several different colors, and they coordinate with the kit, so that's something that I always purchase to go along with my kit, because I get a lot of use out of those. So I just wrote day 2 underneath the title, and here's a close-up of what my page looks like when it's finished. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Until next time, bye-bye.